Welcome back, everyone. Today, we're going deep, deep into the world of Jean Piaget.
Piaget, yes. Such a fascinating figure, really a giant in the field of child psychology.
Exactly. He completely changed how we think about how kids' minds work, right? Like
Yeah.
how they learn, how they see the world. It's still mind-blowing stuff, even decades later.
Absolutely. He was one of the first to really recognize that children aren't just mini adults. They have their own unique ways of thinking.
And that's what we're going to be diving into today. Right?
Exactly. We'll be exploring excerpts from 3 of his books, The Child's Conception of the World,
Okay.
The Language and Thought of the Child,
Hmm.
and The Origin of Intelligence in the Child. Get ready for some serious aha moments.
I'm excited. So before we jump into those fascinating ideas,
Hmm.
what made Piaget's approach so unique? I mean, lots of people study kids, but he seems to have really gone deeper. Crack the code, almost.
It's really interesting, actually. Piaget didn't just observe children from a distance,
Yeah.
He actually engaged with them in these deep, thought-provoking conversations.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, almost like a philosophical detective. He carefully documented their spontaneous questions, the explanations they came up with, and the logic behind their reasoning.
So he wasn't just giving them tests and ticking boxes. He was really trying to get inside their heads. Fascinating.
Exactly. And that led him to some pretty radical conclusions. For example, Piaget found that young children often believe that inanimate objects are alive and conscious.
Oh, wow. Wait, so like a kid might think their teddy bear is having actual thoughts and feelings.
Yes, or that the sun is following them around, or that the wind gets cold because it chooses to. He has this one example, a child who, when asked why a pebble was round, said it was because the water in the Arv River had shaped it over time,
Hmm.
which, it shows this amazing understanding of natural processes, but at such a young age.
Yeah, it's pretty wild. I mean, it's cute, but also kind of blows your mind that kids see the world that way.
It does. And it's not just random magical thinking either. Piaget observed that children actually go through stages of this. He called it animism. Animism, okay.
Yeah. At first, anything that moves or seems to have an impact is considered conscious. They might ask things like, is it the rain that made the fireplace dirty?
So they see intention and purpose everywhere.
Right. Then, as they get older, they start to narrow it down to things that move on their own. They might say something like, the wind feels cold because it's blowing on me.
I see.
They're starting to connect independent movement with consciousness.
It's like they're piecing together a puzzle, figuring out the rules of the world.
Exactly. And even though these explanations may seem fantastical to us as adults, they reflect a really deep, innate drive to understand the world around them.
And I bet Piaget had some interesting insights into how this early way of thinking, this animistic view, impacts us later on.
You bet. This is where it gets really intriguing. He actually suggested that even though we eventually grow out of this animistic phase, traces of it can linger in our adult minds.
Wait, hold on. You're saying that some part of me still thinks the sun is watching me?
Well, maybe not literally, but think about it. Have you ever felt a sense of awe, looking at a sunset? Like it was somehow created just for you.
Yeah.
That feeling that could be a tiny echo of childhood animism, that sense of the world being a little bit magical, a little bit responsive to us.
Oh, that's interesting. I can see that. Okay, I'm starting to see how these seemingly childish ideas actually have some deep roots and might even shape how we experience the world as adults. This is fascinating.
And this is just the beginning. Piaget explored many other aspects of childhood thought, including how kids make sense of natural phenomena, like mountains, stars. That's where his idea of artificialism comes in.
Okay, artificialism. I think we'll have to say that for next time. We're already at the edge of our deep dive for today.
So artificialism, it's this fascinating idea, and it kind of builds on that animistic thinking we were talking about.
Right, like kids thinking the rain is making the fireplace dirty on purpose.
Exactly. But it goes even further. With artificialism, kids believe that pretty much everything in the natural world was made by someone.
Someone.
Like humans. Or God. Like a kid might think that mountains were literally built by giant construction workers, or that the stars are tiny lights someone hung up in the sky.
Wow. That's so funny to think about. But it makes sense in a way, right? Like from their perspective, everything has a maker.
Exactly. They see the world as this giant construction project. And it's not just random. Piaget actually identified stages of how this artificialism develops.
Oh, interesting. So how does it start?
Well, early on, it's all what he called integral artificialism. Everything, literally everything, from the sun to the rivers, is the result of human action. But then, they start to notice differences.
So they get a little more sophisticated with their explanations.
Exactly. They develop what Piaget called technical artificialism. Now they start combining natural processes with human intervention. So, for example, a child might say, clouds come from the smoke of chimneys, and then the sun makes them burn. They're starting to grasp the idea of natural forces, but humans are still playing a key role.
That's fascinating. So they're not just passively accepting what adults tell them. They're actively trying to figure it all out, build their own understanding.
Right, like little scientists coming up with their own theories. And for Piaget, this drive to understand, to create explanations, that's at the heart of intelligence itself.
So it's not just about knowing facts. It's about engaging with the world, building mental models.
Exactly. And he actually had a term for those mental models. He called them schemas.
Schemas. I've heard that word before, but
Yeah.
can you break it down for us? What exactly is a schema in Piaget's world?
Well, think of it like a mental framework, right? Something that helps us organize and interpret information. Like when a baby first encounters a rattle, they'll shake it, put it in their mouth, bang it on things. Through those actions, they're building a schema for what a rattle is and how it works.
So intelligence isn't just about having, like, a high IQ. It's about being able to learn and adapt using these schemas.
Exactly. And Piaget believed that this intelligence, it develops in stages, starting from the sensorimotor stage in infancy, which is all about senses and motor skills,
Right.
all the way up to formal operational thought, which is where we can think abstractly and hypothetically like adults do.
It's funny, this is all reminding me of that saying, children are not empty vessels to be filled, but flames to be kindled.
Yeah.
Piaget really seems to capture that, that active learning process.
He absolutely did. And he also believed that language plays a huge role in shaping thought.
Oh, that's an interesting connection. Because most people, they think of language as just a way to express our thoughts, right? But Piaget saw it as more than that.
Much more. He argued that the way children use language actually reflects their cognitive development. For example, he observed that young children's language is often egocentric. They talk about their own experiences, their own perspective, not necessarily trying to communicate with others.
So it's not that they're being selfish, it's just that their language is very much centered around their own world, their own understanding.
Precisely. They haven't fully grasped the idea that other people have different thoughts, different perspectives. But as they interact with others, through play, through arguments, they start to realize that their way of seeing things isn't the only way.
Makes sense.
And that's when their language starts to become more socialized, more capable of taking different viewpoints into account.
So it's like their language evolves along with their ability to understand other people's minds. That's really cool. Okay, so we've talked about animism, artificialism, schemas, and now how language shapes thought. It's a lot to take in, but it's also fascinating. I'm curious, though, where do these ideas fit in with modern research? Have Piaget's theories stood the test of time?
That's the big question, isn't it? I mean, Piaget's work was revolutionary, no doubt. And a lot of his core ideas, they're still considered foundational. But of course, research never stops. So there have been some refinements, some expansions as we learn more.
So where do things stand now?
Well, for example, Piaget's stages of cognitive development, they were groundbreaking, They gave us this framework.
Oh.
But nowadays, research suggests that development might be a bit more fluid, less step-by-step than he thought.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah. Like, kids might show abilities in some areas that are more advanced than you'd expect for their age, but then lag behind in others.
So it's not quite as simple as saying every 5-year-old thinks the exact same way.
Right. Every child is unique. They develop at their own pace. Individual experiences matter, Cultural background, even genetics. It all plays a role.
That makes sense. So some of the specifics might need tweaking, but the overall picture that Piaget painted, that's still pretty accurate.
I'd say so, yeah. Those general patterns of cognitive development, like the progression from concrete to abstract thinking, that still holds up.
What about his ideas on language and thought? I mean, are those still relevant today? When you have kids growing up surrounded by screens and technology?
That's a really interesting question, and one that's keeping a lot of researchers busy these days. I mean, Piaget couldn't have predicted the digital age, obviously. But what's interesting is that his focus on social interaction, how important it is for language development, that's probably even more relevant now because even though kids are exposed to tons of language through screens, videos, games, all that, It's the back and forth conversations, those real-world interactions with caregivers and other kids that really helps them develop those crucial social communication skills.
So even if they're watching videos and playing games that are talking to them, they still need those face-to-face conversations to really get it.
Exactly. And this connects back to what we were talking about before, Piaget's observations about egocentric language.
Right.
Remember how young children tend to talk about their own experiences and have trouble seeing things from someone else's point of view?
Yeah.
Well, research shows that interacting with real people, especially in play, you know, that helps kids develop what we call theory of mind.
Theory of mind. Is
Yeah.
that like being able to read other people's thoughts?
Not quite mind reading, but it's close. It's the ability to understand that other people have their own beliefs, their own desires, their own intentions, which might be totally different from ours.
Oh, I see.
It's like that aha moment when a child realizes that, someone else might not know what they know or want what they want.
Interesting.
And that understanding, it's crucial for empathy, for social skills, even moral reasoning.
So in a way, Piaget's ideas are helping us understand not just how children think, but how they become more socially aware, emotionally aware. It's pretty amazing. Like, he opened up this whole new way of seeing childhood.
He really did. And his work, it continues to inspire researchers and educators today.
What would you say is the most practical takeaway from all this, from Piaget's work?
I think one of the biggest things is the importance of giving kids these rich, stimulating environments, places where they can actively explore and learn through hands-on experiences.
So instead of just drilling them with flashcards,
Mm-hmm.
we should be giving them opportunities to experiment, to play, to get messy, to figure things out for themselves.
Exactly. That's something that parents, educators, anyone who works with children, they can really take to heart. Whether it's setting up a science experiment in the kitchen, building a fort in the living room, or just letting them loose in nature, those opportunities for active, self-directed learning, they're invaluable.
It's about creating spaces where their curiosity can run wild, where they can build those all-important schemas.
Exactly.
Wow, this has been such a journey, a deep dive into the mind of a child with the help of Piaget's incredible insights. It really makes you appreciate the complexity of how kids learn and grow. It's amazing.
It is. And even though his theories have been refined, expanded over the years, that core message about the importance of active learning, respecting how children think, that's timeless, more relevant than ever, I think.
Absolutely. Well, on that note, I think we'll wrap up our deep dive into the world of Jean Piaget. I hope everyone listening has enjoyed the exploration as much as we have. And remember, no matter how old you get, there's always something new to learn. Always another adventure waiting in that amazing realm of the human mind.